This is a little training session that I did with Basil. I'm teaching him to back up in a chute by shaping, looking for rear foot movement backwards, bringing him close up to me by luring him in with a cookie, puts pressure on them to back away. They don't usually like being quite that close, so then I can mark and reward any of the rear foot movement. The placement of the cookie is in between and behind his front legs. That encourages him to continue to back up to get the reward. And then I pull him close in with another cookie to reset him for another repetition. I do wait out the behavior. I don't use any cues in the beginning. I let him figure out how to move his body to get the reward. If a sit is offered, I don't give him any other information, and I just kind of wait him out, and then I reward the next correct behavior. I'm rewarding extra foot back, so he gives me a little bit more distance after each repetition. This way I can work on getting distance into the behavior. Once he is doing it rather regularly, you can add in your verbal. I have the word back. So when I know he's going to begin to back up after bringing him in, I give that cue back, and he moves backwards. I mark and reward behavior. Again, I withhold the reward and mark with further foot movement. I'm getting a few extra steps on each repetition. Here he paused, but then the next repetition he gave me was 3 steps backwards. Another way to teach is with luring and using a target. I heavily reward putting your back feet on a mark by luring him over and paying him with when his back feet are on. Then I lure him over and I pull that cookie a little bit forward to see if he can maintain his back feet on with me at the side, and I also move to the front and do the same thing. I've rewarded him heavily for putting back feet back on that target, so when he falls off, he places himself back in anticipation of another cookie. Here I'm pulling him forward, and he's trying very hard to stay in place where he's been rewarded. Here I give him the release cue to step forward, and he promptly places himself back up because he knows that's where the reward comes from, and I reward him in place with his feet on the blocks. Now I've moved a little bit farther away, and when I give him his release cue, he comes forward to get the cookie, but then backs himself back onto the blocks to get the mark and get released again. Willa is now adding some distance and adding the verbal cue in. So when I know she's going to begin to back up, I give that cue, and I give her a release word instead of a click, and transition over to that so that it's a duration behavior. She backs up and stays until she hears her release word instead of just the click ending the behavior. Your distance from the block can just keep adding distance.